things for about 15 years now. The topic of social media and social media policies and how to behave online has certainly become a hot topic over the last several years, and that's what we're going to talk about today, and hopefully answer some questions as well. I know that everybody is muted right now, but if people have questions, feel free to type them into the chat function, and after we get done with the first part of our presentation, we'll certainly take some time to answer those questions.
Yeah, we also have the opportunity to unmute someone if you have a question. But probably the best thing to do is just type in your question. We'll get to those, and we've got a few topics teed up already to discuss, and can anticipate some of the questions. So I'll just kind of get started, Adam. So, the first thing we'll get right to it is you see a lot of community associations that want to embrace social media. They want to have their own Facebook page. They want to have, whether it's an Instagram or Twitter or something, to keep community members informed as to what's going on in their community, let them know about things that are happening in the neighborhood. We also have services like Nextdoor that make it really easy for homeowners to connect and get to know each other. So I think that there's great value towards embracing social media in some way, shape, or form. But I guess the challenge becomes when an association itself kind of creates, establishes, and manages their own social media page, kind of invites some difficult challenges. So from your perspective and the experiences that you've had working with community associations that have gone the route of establishing a Facebook page, good idea or not?
It really depends. It's like anything else. Most technology comes with upsides and downsides. And for the most part, social media can be used as a tool to communicate and provide information in an easy way without having to put a stamp on a letter and put the letter in an envelope and disseminate the information to the neighborhood. The difficulty, of course, comes in when you have individual owners and members and neighbors posting their concerns, posting what they think, posting their opinion, or alternatively, when you have the board of directors posting information that's a little bit outside the scope of what they should be doing. So in general, and this is the advice I give associations about 99% of the time when they ask me a question. Associations get themselves into trouble when they step outside what their express purpose is. And in most instances, the express purpose of a homeowners association or a condominium association is to collect the assessments, manage the common area, and enforce deed restrictions. And that's about it. You run into trouble when you go outside of those things. However, if you're using Facebook or Nextdoor to disseminate information to owners about meetings, when is the pool going to open this year, when is the neighborhood night out going to occur, those types of announcements are great to put on social media. It's when we start putting out our opinions, when we start allowing for criticism of certain people or board members, when we run into trouble. And so with that in mind, the best advice I can give is just be reasonable. Use Facebook and Nextdoor as ways to communicate factual information. During this COVID-19 crisis, you can be a source of information for your community. But this comes with a caveat. Don't be the author of this information. Don't decide what you think the best policy for when schools should reopen or when you should or shouldn't wear a mask. Pass on information from reputable sources. Post the county or the city stay-at-home order, post CDC recommendations, and without commentary and without authoring the information, and then you should be okay. It's when we step outside of those boundaries when we run into trouble.
Yeah, I think one of the things that a lot of our board members struggle with is the idea that they set these things up with the best intentions, and they want to be able to communicate, and they want to be able to let everybody know what's going on and staying informed. But by the same token, they get offended when a homeowner in the community who might be the typical naysayer who's going to challenge everything that the board does, no matter what positive strides they make, post something on, on a chat board, and all of a sudden it just starts to create this either misinformation or this ill will. And then we find this need to respond and start doing the back and forth and so on. And so, one of the things that I have always advised our clients on is that I don't think there's anything wrong with setting up a Facebook page or anything else, but know that it's going to come with feedback. It's going to come with commentary. It's going to come with a difference of opinion, and by and large, that's okay. And we'll get into a little deeper in terms of those that abuse such forums for the sake of in terms of remedies and things that we can put into play to avoid that type of behavior. But in essence, one of the things that I've always seen these tools as serving as an ability to communicate a message, and you just have to tune out or ignore the fact that you're going to get commentary and you can't get consumed by it, right? You're doing your best to communicate, one way of what's going on, and then whatever comes out of it, it's okay. And you don't have to find the need to sit there and respond and answer every single item. Certainly being able to pick and choose, one second. Certainly being able to pick and choose what you, one second, I'm sorry, we're running into an issue here. Bear with us 1 second. Sorry about that. Somebody just shared their screen. Wanted to make sure I took those controls back. So anyway, so yeah, just just make sure that you're using it for the purpose of communicating what you can. As you mentioned, use it as a good source to provide good positive communication about things like community events or what's going on in the community and so on. There's great ways to do that, but be cautious. There's going to be feedback on the other side of that, and you can't get consumed by that.
Oh, that's 100% correct. And I can just tell you, 99 times out of 100, when I am brought into a social media type issue, when I'm asked a question about, should we have a social media policy? What should the rules be? Something's happened like what you've just described. And what inevitably happens is we post something on the Facebook page, right, and we get responses and we get comments. And it can be as simple as the meeting is on April 15th at 5 p.m. and 3 people chime in to say, well, it should be the 16th at 7:30. Right. And it doesn't really matter what you do. You'll always have naysayers. You'll always have people criticizing you. And you'll always have people that have complaints. And inevitably, the board of directors, and this isn't a criticism, most of the time, the members of the board of directors are conscientious. They want to do a good job. They volunteered their time and their energy, and in some cases their money to help improve and run an association and do so for the benefit of the whole community. And so when they get attacked in doing something that's voluntary and altruistic, it's natural to want to respond, and it's natural to want to correct the record. And if someone says, Sam, the board president, stole $500 from the treasury, you want to respond. And without fail, almost across the board, I would tell you there's no reason to respond. People aren't paying as much attention as you think they are. Somebody accusing Sam, the board president, of stealing money from the association is likely going to be ignored and most likely not going to be believed. And it doesn't mean you need to refute every false thing that's ever put out there. Of course, that comes with a caveat. If you put up the notice that says the meeting's at 5 p.m. on April 15th, and someone else responds, nuh-uh, it's the 17th at 7:30, you probably should respond and say, no, the original notice was correct. I see that the question is, do we have to allow comments? Absolutely not. And I think utilizing Facebook without the chat feature, the ability for people to make comments and just use it sort of as what I used to refer to as sort of a billboard website, the kind of thing where you just post things and it's there and that's it.
Digital bulletin board.
a digital bulletin board, and have that be the place where you find out about meetings. You can look up your governing documents. You can find out when the gardening committee is going to meet. These are great uses of social media. But the idea that we need to have conversations and comments is just not even very effective, and it's not very beneficial. And cutting that off, I think, is a great idea.
I wanted to just run through some different tools that I've seen used with great success, just in terms of just communication tools. So we have our social media platforms. Facebook has been great just because there's so many people that are on it. It's easy to find, very user-friendly, and so that's always been kind of a mainstay in community communication. Obviously, for those of you who are clients on the call, Town Square has a lot of tools where you are able to post a message out to the community in the announcement section. There are forums set up in Town Square, and the beauty of Town Square is that it also allows you to take a forum post and then move it into a one-on-one communication. So it doesn't mean that you are, when somebody is criticizing an issue or is challenging the board on something, it doesn't mean that we have to necessarily censor that person, but you can, if it is something that would be more appropriate to have a one-on-one discussion on, it does give you the ability to move it off of a forum and deal with that conversation one-on-one. Many of our communities are still kind of warming up to the idea of turning on forums, but it is something that we, something that we can turn on and customize to meet your needs. Some other tools that I think are really helpful. Certainly other social media sites are really helpful. Twitter is always a good one for just sending out very short blurbs. But there's also some really interesting tools that I've used with great success. One of them is Volo Village. It's a community messaging system. It does come at a subscription cost, but it's not bad. I think it's somewhere between $2 and $3 a door per year for a community, and that allows you to do a couple things. One, it allows you to make robocalls like we get when we have bad thunderstorms or something. Sometimes you'll get the municipality, or for those of you who are parents with children in schools, you'll get alerts from the school that it's a recorded message, and so you can get a message out to all homeowners that's recorded, which is really nice. It saves you the cost of printing and postage and trying to get something out. There's also on that same platform the ability to send text messages out to the community, which is really nice. So you type one message and you can send text alerts to everybody. And I think that's really nice because it appeals to the vast majority of demographics in a community, right? So you have some folks who aren't going to adopt Facebook as a place to find information. And the name of that app is called Volo Village. So feel free to email me after and I can send you some information on it. But just one, nothing, I don't have anything to do with them, but something that I've just found to be a nice little easy communication tool that kind of takes the burden away of having to respond to some of the comments because there's no way of responding back. So just really easy way to hit people up with different messages at one time. And then the other thing is just a plain old website. And so, as you know, we offer free websites to our associations. Something that we can take advantage of more often is just putting together a place on your website where you can create announcements and post different things. So there are alternatives to social media, but social media is certainly one that folks are already checking. Being able to see a message from the community on their timeline is really helpful and certainly helps spread the word. I think the other challenge is who administers these pages. And I will tell you that I get very uncomfortable with our managers being able to keep up with being able to administer these pages, because it just is something that creates a whole other element to the job. Number one, it is difficult to keep up with. And number two, as you can imagine, if we had a manager who's managing, 8 communities and all 8 communities have Facebook pages and they're literally becoming social media managers. And that's something that, is going to be a challenge. On larger communities, We have folks who are, and especially those that have sighted personnel, we have folks who, literally just create content and they manage the communication on those platforms, but they have the bandwidth to do so. So, so typically what I've seen in communities is that you'll have someone on the board who's pretty savvy with these things, that can be, who can run point on these types of these forums and these mediums, to be able to post messages as needed and then address commentary as desired, right? And so again, the big thing is let us not forget that as board members, you guys are volunteers, and I don't want anybody to feel the pressure of having to literally sit down and feel like they're running a PR campaign for a major corporation by sitting and addressing every single question and comment that comes in from homeowners. There are forums for that, right? So there are board meetings, there are, there are annual meetings, there are meetings that we set up in order to facilitate communication and keep folks informed. So having to necessarily feel the burden of answering these things via these social media channels, not always the most realistic thing to do.
Well, it's a good point. And the prevalence of email and social media has increased the volume of what we all have to respond to just, 1,000-fold. I probably get 300, 400, 500 emails a day. My clients expect me to respond, and I do the best I can. But as a volunteer, I think your point is well taken. You shouldn't feel the need to respond to every email, to every post, to every allegation, to every question. It's just not feasible, especially with the ability these days to generate so much volume. One of the questions that came through, I think might be answered by this question. I get a lot of questions about, well, when should we delete somebody's post? When should we take something down or get rid of a particular thread? And I think you have to step back a little bit. And first and foremost, I think it's important, at least on the whatever the site is, whether it's Facebook or Nextdoor or whatever, to create rules for your community. This is a website that you own and control. And so if it's your website, if it's Facebook, simply posting some very simple rules, and these don't have to be written by a lawyer, although I'd be happy to look at them. You can have rules like be polite, be courteous, be positive, no negative comments. You can do things like that. You can say, this is a site for a positive and constructive communication to help better the community, and we reserve the right to remove anything we feel is not in accordance with that policy, and then you just delete whatever you want.
I think one of the things that I would caution everybody against, and I think it's important that everybody understand that there is, free speech, right? I always worry when a board censors content that is just constructive criticism, and constructive being the key word there is, somebody is going to have a difference of opinion on how we handled something or whether something is necessary. You're going to have someone who every time you post that you host an event in the community, they're going to say, why are we spending money on this, or why are we spending efforts on this? I don't agree with it, and whatever it is. And it's okay. And it's okay to let that sit there and marinate and not respond to it. Some of these social media channels give you the ability to delete a comment or to hide a comment, and you just be cautious with that, because I don't think that necessarily helps to create an environment that allows for an exchange between, or feedback mechanism to the board.
And I agree. And so it's not my intent to suggest that you should be out there actively censoring posts. To be clear, though, you're not a government entity, and people don't have a First Amendment right of free speech to post whatever they want on your site. That's the legal answer. But what Mitch said is also correct. It's healthy to have a forum where people can disagree. As I'm sure everybody that's a board member knows, there's not a single decision you'll ever make that's going to be unanimously cheered in the association, and that's okay. This is democracy at its smallest level. Right. Some of these associations that I work with will have as few as 10 or 12 units. And then there's some with 2,000 or 3,000. And so it's this little bitty unit of democracy, and democracy thrives when you have free speech and people can voice their opinions. And so the thing that I would say to board members is don't be offended by constructive criticism. Don't shut down all voices that disagree with you, but make decisions you can be proud of and that you can defend, such that when the criticism comes up, you've got a good response. At the same time, it doesn't mean you respond to every single comment or feel like that's you have the duty to do so. You just don't.
There was a question that came in regarding part of the community's policy on social media is that board members are allowed to maybe post, make a post about an event or let somebody, inform somebody about what's going on in the community on a given item, whether it's a maintenance issue or whatever else, but they are not allowed to comment. Thoughts on liability around comments from board members? Should an association take a position that board members should stay away from the commenting process, keep that out of the loop?
Well, it's always easy for a lawyer to say no or don't do that, right? Because doing nothing is the easiest way to not incur any liability. In my view, though, the analysis ought to be, is this activity that we're engaging in, does it involve risk? Can we evaluate the risk? Can we manage for the risk? And so I would never say to a community, board members should never post anything other than the officially sanctioned notices that go out. I wouldn't do that, but I would caution you as a board member that first and foremost, have a policy where whatever is going to be the official communication of the board of directors is somehow approved. Now that could be that every single communication is voted on at a board meeting to be approved. That's a little bit cumbersome. The way that I generally recommend doing it is delegating that authority to someone so that the board can say, hey, Jim, you're the webmaster. This is our official announcement. And then Jim puts it online and he's got the authority to do so. And then there's all kinds of other different ways to approve that. But have a way that a communication can be made official, can have that stamp on it. Then if you're a board member and you're going to make a comment, there should probably be something that says, I'm Jim, I'm a board member, but my post below are my thoughts and my thoughts only. They don't represent the feelings, thoughts, or position of the board of directors, or some words to that effect. The one thing that I would say is board member posts have been used against associations in litigation I've been a part of. And so just like email and just like letters and just like things that we go and file down at the courthouse, once you put it out there, it's out there. And so if you make a statement that could be used against the association later, like for instance, yeah, we probably shouldn't have done that, but we did anyway, and we're trying to make it right. I mean, these are things you probably shouldn't say online. Board members apologizing for the actions of the board, probably a bad idea. And if you do that in the capacity as a board member or without some disclaimer saying it's not the board's official position, you do run the risk of having that used against you later. But then just don't say things that create liability and you'll be fine. And if you have questions, let us know.
One of the things that I would caution everybody against in setting up a, whether it's a Facebook page or anything else, is that just ensure that everybody has access to, at least several members of the board have access to administrator rights on the page. I've seen it happen far too often where somebody sets it up with great intentions and then all of a sudden either walks off the board or leaves the community, and then all of a sudden the password or access to that is locked, and now you have this this page sitting out there with the association's name and a place where folks are going for to stay informed with what's going on, and then it just becomes difficult to manage. Or you have someone who goes rogue and you put the controls in the wrong person's hand and they start to do everything that Adam is advising not to do. And so make sure that you've got some segregation of duties, if you will, and make sure that you've got other people who have control over the page so that you can manage that accordingly. And I think it would be probably helpful to have some kind of, just an informal policy around who's going to handle that, what's going to be posted. And I don't think it's a bad idea to keep board members out of the commenting on different items, because you never know when somebody has couple beers, and they start to get loose in their typing, and you just want to avoid those types of situations. I know that the vast majority of our communities handle it responsibly, but there's always those situations where you just cringe, and you just want to avoid those at all costs.
You do. One of the things that I see come up quite a bit is you'll have a 3-person board, and 2 people will vote to do something, and then they'll announce that it's been done, and then the dissenting board member goes to Facebook to let everybody know this was not my idea. As much as that person probably really wants to let everybody know that, that to me is one of the worst things you could do, is to indicate that there's dissension among the board and that you don't speak with one voice. So things like that I would certainly avoid.
Mark mentioned that their neighborhood has a Facebook group, and they state it's not the official contact forum for the HOA. They have a website, they have a mobile app, they have their, obviously their manager that's available. So homeowners can pretty much facilitate conversation on Facebook, but there's no monitoring of it, and it's very, very clearly, known that it's not going to be monitored. Yeah, it brings up I think it's a great idea. I think that, I don't know that there's going to be a difference on any digital forum if you say that it's official or not official. For the most part, if you have a board member who can be, whose account can be linked to the page, and then they're making comments on a page like anything else, it could be part of the written record, right? I mean, going on record to say that something is happening or not happening, and it could certainly be used against you in some way, shape, or form, I'd imagine.
Well, that's the thing about social media. Once it's out there forever. Even if you delete it, someone could have gotten a screenshot of it. But I think that Mark's position is well taken. There's a neighborhood Facebook group, and sometimes people will get the homeowners association conflated with the neighborhood.
Right.
And for good reason. The Shady Oaks Homeowners Association is also has authority over the Shady Oaks neighborhood, but they're 2 different things. Shady Oaks neighborhood, that's just a group of people that live in Shady Oaks. So if those folks want to have a Facebook page, have it not be official, that's great. The one other thing that I would point out that I think Mark's question raises is, when you do have an official Facebook page or other website, make sure to have some kind of disclaimer on there that direct messages sent are not official communications. The last thing that we would want is for someone to send a DM through Facebook requesting something under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act and saying, well, I thought that was an official communication, and now we're on the hook for responding, et cetera. Right. I think making sure that it's clear that there's an official way to communicate with the board, maybe provide an official email address, let people know they can mail in requests for documents and everything else to a specific address, but avoid, like the plague, using that communication tool as an official channel, and just make sure you tell everybody it's not.
Yeah. One of the pitfalls that I've seen happen far too often is that the board might set up their own page to be able to, to be the official Facebook page of the community, and then you've got 2, 3, 4 other rogue Facebook pages that show up that are neighborhood pages, unofficial pages, but they'll say it's XYZ Community Association's Facebook group, and that starts to create a distraction to what is official and what is the right source of information. Does the board have any is there any course of action that is available to a board of directors to shut down a rogue Facebook page that is mimicking kind of the official stance of the association and spreading misinformation?
There is, and I'll answer the question kind of with the technical legal answer first, and then we can step back and say, well, should you?
Right.
But yes, a homeowners association or a condo association has a common law right to its name. Much like a common law trademark. And so if somebody else is out there using the name of the association in a way that's confusing to the marketplace, then you can stop them from doing that. And there's legal recourse for doing it. We can send a cease and desist letter that says, take this thing down. We might be able to use one of the federal provisions like cyber squatting,
Right.
those provisions to do a takedown request. There's a number of ways we can get it removed. None of them are free, and it's going to cost a little money. And the ability to recover those fees that you'll spend might be limited, but the recourse is there. Now, here's where I step back and say, okay, but so what? If somebody has started a website, if you're the Shady Oaks Homeowners Association and someone's started the website Shady Oaks HOA Stinks,
Right.
And it's not getting much traffic, but it's still out there and it's kind of annoying, you have to think, is it worth the fight?
Right.
A lot of times these are absolutely internet trolls.
Yeah.
Their goal is to bring you down to their level, engage you in some way, and get you interested in debating with them. If you do that, they've won. And so a lot of times nobody's paying attention to them but you. And so figure out if it's worth shutting down a website or not, if it really is causing confusion. If people are showing up at phantom meetings that are being noticed on this fake website, yeah, that's a real issue and we should do something about it. But if it's just one of these one-off goofballs, you might be better off just ignoring them. And in fact, that's the advice I most often give. Well, somebody's posted something and it's untrue and we have to refute it. And most of the time the answer is, well, no, not really. You don't have to.
Right. Adam, one of the terms that I hear come up all the time for board members is, this person has gotten to the point where I think we have a claim for libel. I mean, they are vicious in what they're posting. What action can I take in order to shut this person down? And can I take any legal action, either personally or as a board, to be able to quiet somebody who is really doing harm to the community through misinformation?
And the answer is yes, you can. If somebody is posting in writing information that is untrue, that casts the association in a bad light and is defamatory and causes damages, then you can sue them. Now, if they're posting things that are in the category of defamation per se, then you don't even need damages. So those are things like that someone has a loathsome disease, that they've committed a crime, and that committing a crime is the one that I can think of would come up. It's, John the president has stolen all the money from the association. And if it's just not true, that's probably defamation per se. You could probably sue that individual and likely get an injunction to prevent them from doing it in the future. But it's rarely worth it. Defamation cases rarely result in big judgments for money. And if the goal is to try to shut it down, we can usually get that done. If the goal is to take it down, we can usually get that done. But 9 times out of 10, when somebody comes to me and says, I've got a defamation case, we try to talk them out of filing it because there just generally isn't evidence of a bunch of damages.
Right.
But there is recourse, and certainly there's cases that rise to a level where I say, you've got to file something and you've got to do it right now.
Can you shut somebody out of a forum? So if you have a private Facebook group and a homeowner registers, is accepted into the group, it starts to become a problem on that forum, can you pull them out?
Absolutely. And the reason I say that is you won't find, and as I say this, somebody will figure out an exception and hopefully send it to me, but I would be shocked if you could find a declaration for a homeowners association or a condo that mentions Facebook in there.
Right.
And so that's going to be, the end all be all of the question is, do we have to let people on the Facebook page? And as long as it's not in your declaration that says you must have a Facebook page and everybody gets to sign up, then you can run the Facebook page as an ancillary and voluntary service. And like I said, have a policy on the page that says, look, we're in charge. And if you post something and we don't like it, we can take you off of there. I would say to use that sparingly. I think having a forum where people can be open and dissent and respectfully disagree is a great tool. But all too often that devolves into name calling and everything else we see online and on Twitter and everything else. And so, use your judgment, be reasonable, but I don't think that there's any legal recourse somebody could have to say, well, you kicked me off of Facebook and I have a cause of action against you, I'd be very surprised if that was the case.
Well, it is kind of a little bit of an administrative burden to manage. There are ways that you can close off a Facebook page just to members, so you can ensure that if you are going to set something like that up, essentially someone would be, whoever's the organizer of that page or the moderator on that page, would there be a registration format or request to join that group, and then you can consult the homeowner roster and just kind of check off the list, who lives in the community or not, and let them in that way. Certainly for those of you who are using Town Square, that's a much easier process because you have to have an account or be invited in as a resident in the community in order to join that. So you can have better controls over that. Other sites like Nextdoor could be an issue. Some of them, some of those are set up to where it just kind of draws a circle around the neighborhood, and so you might encompass most of the community in that in that zone. You might get others from nearby communities that are included and are able to join, but there are some controls that you can set up for that as well. So I think if you're going to invest the time and effort into doing that, it's probably not a bad idea to create something where you can limit it to trolls, you can limit it to homeowners in the community, and then to Adam's point, you can bounce somebody out of there if not. Now, should the association put together some kind of a written policy that creates rules around what type of information it will be allowed and what type of information will be excluded from such forums, deleted from such forums, and ultimately lead to somebody being exited from a group like on Facebook?
I think so, and I think that really what this means is that the board of directors elects to have a social media presence and does so with some foresight and some design. And so this can be as simple as saying, here are the 3 categories of things we're going to post. We're going to post board meeting notices. We're going to post, the date of the pool opening, and we're going to announce when any of the neighbors' kids have lemonade stands. And that's all we're going to put on there. And then that's easy. And then you can put some rules on there about be respectful. Your posting is at the sole discretion of the board. We can delete anything we want to. And that's about it. Put some guidelines. You can have a little preamble. You can say, we want there to be open discussion on this board, but we want neighbors to be neighborly. Yeah. And anything that we consider not being a good neighbor, you're getting deleted. And things like that. So it doesn't have to be a policy full of legalese and technical jargon. It can just be a be nice to everybody policy, and we're gonna delete your post if you're not nice. Yeah. And then you can have pre-authorized categories of announcements, or you can simply say we're not going to post anything unless it's approved by at least 2 board members. Yeah. Or we're only going to post the meeting minutes and decisions that we make in meetings. You can limit it however you'd like, and then have a policy that makes sense.
We've seen communities starting to try to go the route of digital communication for everything instead of having to spend money on paper and postage and mailing. And while we're not in a world yet where we can do that 100% in all communities, it is something that we're starting to see more and more communities being mindful of. So homeowners will opt out of mailed communication, and there's typically a form that accompanies that. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that process. If a community wants to go to, let's say, their website or email for correspondence and establishing official forums for things like posting notices, a couple follow-up questions. One is, what does that look like in terms of a best practice for an association to go the route of creating a record where a homeowner can opt out of physical mail? And then 2, what is in a world where we're still posting notices on bulletin boards or by the mailbox, can we move to a route where Facebook or a website or Town Square becomes the official forum for communication rather than a conspicuous spot in a community?
Well, I think you've laid it out pretty well. There are still legal requirements for both condominiums and single-family residential subdivisions. You've got Chapter 209 of the property code for subdivisions, you've got 81 and 82 for condos, and there are requirements that certain notices be sent by mail.
Right.
Now, there are provisions that allow people to opt in, as you've indicated, but it gets a little tricky when you have 80% opt in and 20% not. But if you have people sign a document that says, pursuant to 209, I understand I'm entitled to communications in the following categories, and I hereby consent that if you send those communications to this email address, or if you post those notices on this website, that counts as notice to me under 209. These policies haven't ever been challenged in court, so it's hard for me to say how that would work out. But if you have a document that says you can send me notices at this email address signed by the owner,
Right.
that's going to be a pretty good way to go. So I think as long as we're doing it that way, it's okay. I do think, though, that you're going to create a two-tiered system.
Right.
Where you've got the opted in and the not opted in, and it might just be more trouble than it's worth.
Sure.
But I think your point's well taken. Our Texas legislature runs about 10 or 15 years behind technology.
Yeah.
And so you won't be seeing any provisions in 209 or 81 or 82 changing to, say, Facebook anytime soon.
Yeah.
But we can be innovative, and we can start the process now, and it will be a slow conversion. But maybe eventually you can achieve 100% opting in and then go completely digital.
For purposes of posting a meeting notice, is a Facebook page that's an official, deemed the official form of communication for an association, is that sufficient?
It might be.
Yeah.
Under 209, the property code requires that if an association has an official website, that meeting notices be posted there, as well as all of the governing documents, and there may be one other requirement. And so what makes a website an official website? There's not a filing with the Secretary of State's office or the official public records of the county that says this is our official website. Now, as I just said that, I'm thinking, well, you could do that. You could file a resolution that the board approves that says our official website is this Facebook page.
Right.
I think once you've done that, it's now your official website, and that can count as where you put the notices, as long as everybody can see the site, and you've informed everyone via whatever communication method they've elected to use with you that is your official site. So I think it could be made the official site, and it may have more functionality than some other tools.
Yeah.
So that could be one way to do it. We just have to look at the specific terms and conditions of the website, who can go on, who can get access. And then I will say this, and I know I'm an old dinosaur when I say this, but I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter. I don't have social media accounts. I think I might have a LinkedIn back there. And so I know that I'm an old dinosaur when I say that. However, in my experience,